I pulled up one of my old pieces of artwork and I want to redraw it. It's from 2011. Some of it's a little more elevated than others, but I thought that would be a fun thing to do. My creative juices are not like right now. So I'm going to go back and leverage some art. Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. So I thought I'd show you what I'm going to kind of piddle on today. Here it is. I'm pulling up my portfolio from 2011. So this is everything I made that year, which is not some, and I don't need extra colorways, but this is what I sent to my lawyer when I was getting all my work copywritten back in the day. And so some of there's duplicates, but this is the work that I made that year. And some of it, like this, for instance, was a real step in the right direction for me that year. Hand drawn, of course, the font is something I probably wouldn't do today. But when I posted this, tons of design bloggers like started resharing it on Pinterest back in the day. And they were like, design done right. And I remember being like, yes, I'm doing something, because this was like a signature of a lot of my work back in the early days with these little lines. And I didn't have Procreate. I was hand drawing everything, scanning it, and then coloring digitally. And then I actually scanned in my own like watercolor paper and kind of changed the color a little bit. And I think I soaked it in tea maybe to get that color and then put it together. So that was tight. So like I made the bear and the hare. I was still doing nursery art. This pig was real popular that year. Sold a lot of piggies. He ended up in a fabric line, but some of it was a little bit more rough. So like, oh, this chicken, she was a beauty. We don't even sell her anymore, but like this was featured in Better Homes and Gardens. And we sold a lot of prints of little chickens. And in Northwest Arkansas, specifically where I live in Springdale, it's like the chicken capital of the world, legitimately. So that was popular here. But some of them were a little bit rougher around the edges. And I'd started this alphabet series that I never finished. How many of you have started a series that you've never finished? Can you just tell like the craftsmanship is not the same quality as like, say, this little friend here? And so I didn't get very far. I got like through E or F. Elephant was a little better. I put a little more effort into the elephant, I remember. Back then, I was selling art prints hand over fist. It was before digital prints were a thing. Anyways, this is like that work. Oh, Quilted Fox. This one kind of put me on the map for a little while. Like people loved this design, and we don't sell it anymore because it kind of fell out of style and it wasn't as popular as some of the other things, but trends come and go and people loved Quilted Fox. Anyway, I'm going to work on a different fox today. And again, it's like the craftsmanship on these were not great. Like, look at my hand lettering. I want you to look, be encouraged if you don't know how to hand letter yet, because I was selling that, y'all. I was selling it. People actually were buying these, like sweet, lovely people. But my skill has come a long way since 2011. And I was still able to begin making a living as an artist, with this. And I'm so thankful for that. That was the year of the owls. I did an owl calendar. So I'm going to be working on this little friend like here. I actually just imported this into my iPad, just a JPEG of it. And I'm going to just use it as reference and redraw it and see if I can make the idea fresher now. So what I'm going to do today is kind of a same but different concept. So when we're talking about copywritten work, and remember, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a gal with a dream who talks to a lawyer a lot and brings in a lawyer for our courses. And I've dealt with a lot of copyright issues in my time here. So there's a term in the industry called same but different. In fact, we're about to do this for a client because they want a piece that is already licensed and they really want the concept. So we're going to create something new. So with same but different, you would re-register it. Like if I redraw this, it'll be a new composition, most likely. I'm going to take the same idea and change it. So I'll probably still do a mommy fox or a parent fox and a baby fox, some foliage behind it, mushrooms, and then I'm going to do a new banner. And so it is going to be a different composition, but so it's going to be same but different. Does that make sense? So I would, if I liked it and I felt like it was a contender, I would totally just register it as a new piece of art. So that's what I would recommend. So that's the answer to same but different. So we do this a lot with clients. I did that for Fancy Feast cat food back in the day. They liked one of my cats. They wanted their own cat, drew it. Then we licensed a same but different version for Crane and Company stationery. So there's a lot of opportunity. Just, I always want to remind people, like, look at Rifle Paper Company and you all know what their flowers look like just when you close your eyes, right? You can see it. And they're going to redraw those same types of flowers in different ways over and over again, right? So I'll answer Cheryl's question. Can I speak a little bit about the most important things to do and focus on when you're new to all of this? So Cheryl is a retired classical flutist, and I'm developing watercolor skills, and I hope to sell cards. So they're wondering like what they should focus on in these early days as they gain skills and settle in. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, if you're still developing skills, I want you to spend the next 12 months mastering your skills. I think that that is something that the more I've taught and the more I am really seeing a need, especially for like some mediums that, sometimes with digital art, you can get there a little faster. But when you're doing like watercolor and other mediums, like I really want you to take the time to master it. Mastery is something that like even I still work on. Like if you saw my early work and now like it continues to elevate. So before I would try to do much else, I would just make it as good as possible, know it inside and out. In fact, I was thinking about this like with Procreate, because I keep making changes all the time. Like I'm not a master of Procreate, even though I understand it, but I have a hankering to do some good old fashioned, let's download the manual from Procreate and just read it from cover to cover to see how it all works. Because I think there's just something to taking the time to understand something and master it before you move on to the next stage, which I would call style development after that. And when you're developing your style and trying new things, like you can absolutely try to sell some things. It's an experimental time. So that's my advice. Hope that helps. But yeah, I literally might download the whole manual of Procreate and just read it and understand it, because I feel like I'm getting old and can't keep up with all the changes. Like now there are people using Procreate Dreams to animate. And I'm like, I don't have time to animate. I do not. Anyways, maybe someday. My advice is to just be honest about where you're at when you're presenting yourself. So, like, if you're in a stage of exploration, which PS, a lot of people really love watching explorative time for artists, I think that first of all, you have to decide who you want to be and who you want to be presented as, like in the future. I was looking at this quote. This is by Brendan Bouchard, High Performing Habits. And he says, be more intentional about who you want to become, have a vision beyond your current circumstances, imagine your best future self, and start acting like that person today. So I think that it's twofold. I would advise, like, where do you want to be? Like a year from now, 5 years from now? What kind of artist do you want to be? Gather examples of some people who are presenting the way you want to present, find your own spin on it. And just know that, like, what does that future version of yourself need to do today? How would they talk about themselves online? Take a photo of themselves for a headshot, maybe like this. I don't know. But my point is, like, think there, but then just know that, like, you can also let people in on the secret. I've got a secret. I am experimenting with new mediums right now, and this is like the next couple of years are going to be like a little bit exploratory. So if you're used to certain things from me, just know that I have the vision for where I'm going. And you can even like paint the vision for people. People are really interested in the story, bringing them along for the story to understand. I think understanding the why sometimes can be super duper helpful for people to understand like the motivation behind it and connect with it. So anytime that you're making a change, not just with a rebrand, but craft the story that you want them to know about the why and bring them in on that like journey. A lot of people know this about me, that I love a limited color palette. I love to, in order to, I feel like, push myself creatively, not have too many options, especially in the beginning of finding a style, is to start with what you like. So, old rule of thumb, look in your house, look at your clothing, see what colors you're drawn to, and then pick out like 8 to 12 of them if you're being generous. Sometimes I make people start with fewer and they don't like it. But sometimes I make people start with like a super limited color palette of like 5 colors. And I would only create in those colors for a while. So like early on, to be honest, the color palette that I used in the very beginning, and I'm a little embarrassed, it was a default desaturated color palette in Adobe Illustrator. There you go. My entire brand was built with came with the program default Adobe Illustrator desaturated color palette. Of course, I didn't use all the colors, but if you were to look at like, yeah, I'll pull up my screen maybe and show you because it's very clear. That's what I use. Anyway, my point is, I just really stuck with that old rule of thumb, is to keep it limited and start with what I like And I was really hesitant to shift colors based off of trends I would see because I felt like to find my style, I needed to work in a specific color palette and be cohesive. In fact, when I pull up I'm just going to pull up what I pulled up earlier. So this was like the desaturated color palette. And that was hand drawn Adobe Illustrator. But like, if you know that color palette, you'd be like, yep, I recognize that blue. But the thing is, like, I pretty much, you can see the colors where I tried something different here and it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Like a lot of it feels cohesive here. This is like old work from 2011. But whenever I would introduce a new color, like it, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Like this periwinkle, I don't feel like really worked for me, but turquoise did. So I'm just hesitant to bring in too many new colors. And like this didn't work at all. I tried a baby blue one. Oi, didn't like that. So start there, limited color palette. And speaking of like finding your voice and style, I just think that your early work is truly like the building blocks from like what you're going to develop later, and it'll keep changing and growing. But I think that there's a lot of magic in the early work, in the sketches, and just enjoy that process of finding your style. Early on, to be honest with you, I just made whatever products I wanted to make. So like I feel like I've always been a product gal at heart, and I'm always thinking about the product I want to create, and then make the artwork that like I think could serve that the best. Early on, like I was drawing like standalone little critters like you saw when I shared my screen with white background. And then I was like, I could turn that into a cut and sew pillow. So I sold all these pillows that were cut and sew because that would work for the art and the audience. But then differently, like I just wanted to make stockings one year. So I just figured out I hand screen printed my art, some illustration that I thought looked cute on hand sewn stockings. And so I don't think it comes like which one's first. Like, does the product pick you or do you pick the product? Honestly, it's when you're ready. Here's something that I'll tell you, and maybe it sounds counterintuitive and maybe it doesn't matter at all, but like people really want the formula. They want the calendar with the perfect dates on it. Like, when should I pitch holiday? When should I pitch Mother's Day? And that's good if you want that structure. But what I will tell you is, I have personally and seen other people do it, license artwork all year round, pitch all year round. Because if a client is not working on holiday for this year or next year, they're working for the next year after that. Manufacturers work so far in advance. So, like, pitch as soon as you feel ready. The folks that I coach that actually break into licensing, they are not doing the like one and done, I didn't hear back. They are going, going, going. A Leverage Your Art alum. After Leverage, she joined a mastermind that I run. She had this pitching system. She just took what we taught her and she's like, I'm just going to turbocharge this sucker. And she just was pitching, 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 follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. And then she was like, yeah, I got like, I can't remember the amount of licensing deals she got in one year, but it was a lot. And it was more than I'd seen a lot of people do. And the truth is, she was laser focused. She literally created work, added a portfolio, pitched, created, added, pitched. And, I have all these systems I teach because licensing is something I'm an expert at, I guess I'd say, because that's what I do a lot of, and product. But at the end of the day, all you really need to know is make good marketable art, pitch it, and then pitch it again. I want to show you guys something. So I always like to be transparent with people. This year was a weird year for me with licensing because several of my contracts expired this year. Contracts, because you get contracts 2-3 year terms. So several of my contracts expired. So it was time to really go out and do some pitching. So we put a lot of feelers out this year. And then, in the final hour of the year, this great opportunity came up for us. So we went the extra mile and we put together an entire mocked up collection for this client of what we could do for them. So it's in addition to our portfolio, we just made a little lookbook. So we used a lot of our existing art. We have a tea towel club that has now I just looked, it has 2,400 subscribers now each month. So they were really into florals, like we're in our floral phase. So, it looks like a, traditional, like kind of like catalog. Here's some design elements. And we talk about like what's available here, email, website, copyright information. But then we mocked up products for them. And we just went this extra mile. So when I say we, I have someone on my team now who helps me with this part because I'm a busy lady. And anyway, we mocked up all these cute things for them and they loved it so much. Are they the perfect mock-ups? No. Some of them are better than others. Like this turned out really nice, this bag. I like this pillow a lot. We pulled out elements from the design of the bunnies and made them standalone illustrations. This is from an upcoming fabric line. We pulled those out. We just used what we had all over the place. We're not using that because that's just a font. We threw it in there just for an example. But it went over so well. And we're like going to be able to do several collections for them now, we think. So sometimes whenever you get like a response, like you send out the pitch and then someone's responding, like you can go if you feel like it. If you have nothing but time and know how to make mock-ups, mock up like a lookbook for them. I don't want to put pressure on you to say you have to do it, but it has worked for us. Tamara saw my lookbook and saw where there was a font there and said that we're not going to use that font. She's questioning as if I can't use fonts or I'm not going to use that font. Okay, let me clarify. That font is very much not Gingiber. I'll go back and show you guys. It was just a placeholder font, but if you were to if you know my work, you would see that and be like, that does not look like Gingiber lettering. That's all I meant. So I actually teach about when you can use fonts and leverage your art quite a bit. I added those lessons. If you're a 2020 student, you have that access to that. And if you joined in 2023, you can go watch that lesson. But this is just not really us. That's all I meant. So there are usage terms for what fonts you can and cannot use. So that's all I have to say. We're just about out of time. I'll end with the story that this design is one of my best-selling designs, and it's a public domain Emily Dickinson quote. And did you know that this year the Emily Dickinson Museum picked it up and started selling it, the sticker, which is cool. That's not the story though. It turns out this whole time I forgot part of the quote. There's supposed to be an I at the beginning of that. It's supposed to say, I dwell in possibility. And they were so sweet. And they ordered all these stickers from us several times. And then finally, they were like, would Stacie mind maybe adding the I to the front of that? We really love Emily Dickinson's quotes, to be exact. And I had no idea what I had done. And I am literally staring at a book of Emily Dickinson's poetry across from me on a bookshelf. And anyway, if the Dickinson Museum will still work with me, even though I butchered one of their most famous quotes, there's hope for all of us. And that's what I'll leave you with. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.